Appreciate it. And thanks, everybody. Really appreciate everyone taking the time here to join us as we near the end of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. As you mentioned, I'm Patrick Ganome with HBKS Wealth Advisors, and really appreciate all our clients and friends, choosing to join us here this morning. For those that aren't aware of HBKS, we're a conflict-free, full-service registered investment advisor, providing a full suite of tools and resources and solutions for clients, from individual wealth management, financial planning, to really my specific area on corporate retirement plan services. We're happy to have our good friends from Vertilocity here today to walk us through some of the importance of cybersecurity. I know we all deal with it, and I couldn't think of a better group to hopefully provide helpful information and insights for you and for your businesses as we move forward. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Justin and Chris, and really appreciate everyone taking the time to join us here today.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. Really appreciate the intro. Look forward to presenting here on cybersecurity and how to stay protected against present-day threats. Right, it's an ever-changing landscape, so it's always good to check in and see what's changed and what we need to do as organizations to ensure we're protected. Just quick about us here. As Wayne mentioned, I'm Justin Krentz, one of the principals here at Vertilocity. I've been with the team now for about 18 years, so I'm going to have to update that at this point. But my focus is really on the business side of the house, so anything non-technical, essentially, right? So primarily focused in business development, account management, strategic planning, budgeting, business reviews, things of that nature. Whereas Chris, my counterpart here on the webinar and partner in the organization, is our technical lead. So he focuses in all things security. He heads up our security practice. He helps with strategy, risk mitigation, compliance, business continuity, so on and so forth. A little bit about Vertilocity. So we are an IT services firm. We're an HBK company, right? So that makes us a part of the same family as HBKS. As Patrick mentioned, we work very closely together. We share offices in certain locations. So in a lot of capacities, we're very strategically aligned. And, again, our focus is really on helping organizations navigate technology. So that's a very broad brush, right? But we really help in a myriad of capacities. So, ultimately, what we look to do is really help businesses accomplish their goals and protect their value, right? By aligning the right technology solutions to support whatever it is that they're looking to accomplish. So whether that be managed IT services, right, where we effectively act as the IT department, strategic planning and VCIO guidance, where we're helping to really drive decision-making from a technology standpoint in organizations. Our ERP practice, enterprise resource planning, that helps deploys, implements, supports back office accounting solutions, primarily Sage Intacct, Acumatica, some legacy Dynamics. And then we've got our modern workplace group that really helps everybody in data governance, how to unleash the power of your data, Power BI, AI, all of that. Really fun part of technology, I'll say. And then security, which brings us here today. And so why are we here, right? Just some alarming stats. So roughly 60% of small businesses reported experience a cyber attack within the last year, right? That's a big number, 60%. And then within those, of those that had a major cyber event, 60% had to actually close down within 6 months. I think just goes and shows the seriousness, right? The severity with these type of attacks. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced it, but a high percentage of these are starting an email, right? With a phishing attempt to gain access to your credentials or to your systems. And lastly, for those of you that are involved in management or oversight of your cyber insurance policy, right? Those documentations continue to get longer and longer and longer. There's more requirements, there's more questions. It's just becoming a much heavier lift. So what are we going to cover today? We'll start. We'll take a look at today's threat landscape. Right. What does that look like? Then we're going to dive into a little bit of why generalist IT support isn't good enough anymore. We'll look at how to build layers of protection to keep your businesses protected, and then we'll wrap things up with what to do from here, to ensure that your organization is safe. And with that, I will hand things over to Chris.
Good morning. So yeah, world of IT security and cybersecurity is honestly it's a pretty wild place these days. We're seeing just tremendous growth in targeted attacks, really powered by advances in artificial intelligence. So we're long gone from the days of just a phishing email or a spam email being the old Nigerian prince. Now it's perfectly crafted emails that look just like something that you would expect to see from a major retailer, a business partner, and we're also seeing a rise in just as we become more and more dependent on these cloud services, that the cloud services themselves are being breached and losing data, losing user credentials, using all sorts of information that our businesses depend on. Whether it's the system going down or data being leaked, it's just a tremendous threat to everyone who's dependent on those systems. I know today, or in the past week, we've had a major outage for both Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure that were significantly business impacting. Not necessarily that any data was lost in those attacks. Both of them, I believe, are due to misconfigurations, but it impacts business, and so we have to start planning about, okay, when something like this happens, how do we react to it? How do we avoid being impacted by it? And then just the continuous march of exploits and patching systems and maintaining a secure environment is becoming harder and harder as it's basically big business to find exploits and exploit them. So, as I mentioned in the very beginning, like email is absolutely the gateway into almost every cybersecurity attack. I've seen various statistics. Somewhere between 85 and 95% is what we're seeing. Email attacks, somebody getting phished, a user losing their credentials, somebody receiving an email that looks legitimate. Often, these are very, very targeted. They now take the time to learn about your organization and who you do business with, and they craft just incredibly accurate emails that look almost indistinguishable. And there's usually some very small telltale that sometimes may or may not even be human readable, but is the slight difference that is instead of it being from a real user, it's from somebody who's impersonating a business partner or a vendor or a major retailer, and it looks so legitimate that oftentimes users just fall for it. And we've seen organizations make transactions. We've seen wire fraud where, hey, we're gonna purchase a property, but somebody at just the right time sent in that email that you need to send your wire transfer to this information, and it was falsified. So we're just seeing a tremendous increase in the accuracy and effectiveness of impersonation emails, spoof emails, and so email is really the forefront of where cybersecurity needs to be focused.
Yeah, and Chris, just to expand on that a little bit, I think it's important to note that they're opportunistic, right? I mean, this isn't
Extremely
casting a wide net, right? Historically, like you mentioned earlier, the Saudi prince or the, hey, this is a generic message that I'm going to blast out to, every potential email that I can get it to. Now they're looking for those, updates. They're looking on LinkedIn. They're reading press releases, right? That say acquisitions or mergers, and then they're
absolutely
then being very, very thoughtful and strategic in how they attempt to gain access, right? So they'll see who are the ones that are signing checks, who's the VCIO, who's the controller, who's overseeing this, who's overseeing that, and they'll craft their messaging to align with what's happening present day in your business. So
absolutely
that's really scary is the depth of knowledge that's out there in the public. They're using that as a weapon effectively at this point.
Yeah, and again, it's we love AI, but we also hate AI because they're using AI, going out there, scraping that information, and it's just amazing how quickly they can compile a dossier of legitimate information about an individual or an organization, who they're doing business with, what their relationships look like, and they use all of that and can very, very quickly now start crafting very targeted campaigns against really anyone. It's not, it used to be, hey, I'm too small for anybody to care about. That's just not the case anymore. Now the priority is, who can we find that's the most vulnerable? And often that's the small businesses that don't have the resources, to really invest in large-scale IT security, whether it's a manpower thing or a technology thing or a budget thing. They're looking for anywhere there's an opportunity to take advantage, and if they can find an opening, they'll go for it. It really doesn't matter how small you are. Which brings us to the financial reality of it, is that cyber attacks are tremendously costly. You think about just what does not being able to produce do to a business. If an organization is down for a day, well, maybe I can handle that. But if it's something where you're down for 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, how long does it take to restore the systems? How long does it take to wipe every PC? How long does it take? And we're not producing while that happens. So that can be tremendously expensive. There's also the cost of mitigation, the cost of an investigation and a recovery, and the damage to an organization's reputation, opportunities lost, liability if personal information was leaked or confidential information was leaked, or other organizations that you're connected to are also affected. So there's just a huge amount of risk out there for really for any business. And insurance, which initially when things like ransomware started to become a thing, the insurance industry was leaping for joy at the new opportunity. Everybody wanted cyber insurance, and now it's as we mentioned, it's becoming a real process to even qualify with 16, 17, 18 page applications and lists of requirements. And, obviously the insurance companies are in the business to not pay out. So they want to make sure that every single base is covered before they'll cover. So, we've seen all sorts of things with these kind of attacks, and it does. And the success story there, it talks about a client discovering that there was a suspicious invoice, and it again was perfectly crafted. It looked so legitimate, but we had a monitoring solution in place that flagged that, hey, this email is not from not from a source that emails from this domain normally come from. And we were able to catch that and stop them before they made a payment to a fraudulent invoice. And that's something that you want to make sure that your organizations are investing in, is those tools that actually monitor the email and look for those suspicious behaviors, because it's becoming more and more of a problem of like, just spam filtering isn't going to catch it. There has to be something that's looking at behaviors, where it came from. Is it coming from the usual place is a very important piece of information that the legacy spam filter just doesn't check.
And so we hear this a lot of times, right? I have an IT guy, or we have a small local group that supports our environment. And what we find is that technology continues to evolve and become more specialized. Those quote unquote generalists don't have that granular knowledge to keep you protected, right? So whether it be lack of proactive prevention, right? Some of the things Chris just mentioned, inability to adapt with growth or changes to your organization, right? As your organization pivots, grows, or adjusts the way that you're operating, or they aligning those technologies to facilitate that. Limited industry knowledge or compliance needs. I think that's another huge one here, right? I mean, as we talked about cyber insurance, and that continues to expand and grow, as does compliance frameworks, right? So, healthcare, if you look at HIPAA, is kind of the gold standard for compliance. I mean, that is an ever-changing, evolving compliance framework. As technology moves and changes, the compliance frameworks are going to have to catch up, right? So being able to truly understand the specifics and nuances, and how do you navigate that, and so that you're investing properly. You're not overspending here when you can be doing things more efficient there, right? So it all equates to a weakened security posture in certain capacities, right? I mean, it's that whole process gets woven into security. And this is just more of a visual representation of those things, right? If you look at proactive versus reactive, having a strategy versus the inability to effectively plan, right? And that could be because of lack of knowledge, not for lack of effort. It's just not understanding those nuances, those industry-specific components, compliance aspects. Scalable tools versus one-size-fits-all, right? Again, something that may have made sense when you were, a fraction of the size that you are now, obviously isn't going to fit in the same capacity. Or if how you're operating has changed and those tools don't scale to touch those other points of technology, again, security gap. Doing regular assessments versus keeping outdated defenses in place. Again, kind of just building off of what I'd mentioned, but it's because of the ever-changing landscape we're talking about here. You can't get comfortable, right? It can't be a thing where, hey, we did our security assessment 3 years ago. We've got it in the documentation somewhere on a shelf. Well, that's basically a paperweight at this point, right? There's no valuable detail in there. That needs to be an evolving, continuous exercise. It's like if you say, hey, well, I went to the doctor 3 years ago and he said I was healthy, so I think I'm all good, right? Things change, we grow, we get older, we need to continually see the physicians, and then you've got to get into the specialists, right? So that's kind of aligns with what we're talking about here. But this is just really, again, where strategic IT partners differentiate from the quote unquote generalist.
So, sorry about that. Yeah. So the cost of the wrong Fed. I mean, the the IT generalist does. I mean, they do what they do, and a lot of times, the engagement is very limited with them. It's hey, I need you to fix this system, or I need you to put this system in place, and it's set it and forget it. It's not being constantly monitored, updated, managed, reviewed. And then the reality is you only know what you know. So someone who's not doing the management of these systems every day, someone who doesn't know the compliance requirements of your specific industry, they're going to do their best, but in most cases, but they also just don't know what they don't know. They probably got an experience with a limited tool set, and they use that tool set to the best of their ability, but a single individual or a small group is just not going to have the depth of knowledge of a team of experts in various fields who have been through the trenches and know who to reach out to if there's a need somewhere else outside of their experience. And that translates into systems going down because they haven't been maintained or aren't secured, or any myriad number of reasons. Maybe we just haven't planned for the uptime needed. There's going to have to be maintenance, and we didn't really plan for a system that can have maintenance and still be functional. There's going to be compliance gaps because the generalist just doesn't know what my industry requires for compliance, or even if we're not directly under a compliance, do we have partnerships and contracts that require us to comply with certain frameworks? Staff get frustrated because things aren't working or systems are slow. And I think probably everyone knows someone who's frustrated with a system at work. Certainly, if you've been to the airport, you've met frustrated airline staff that the system's so slow, and that frustrates both clients and staff, and it leads to churn in both. And then just the erosion of trust is, I don't know about that organization. Their information systems seem slow and spotty, and things are going down, and that can lead to organizations just not wanting to do business with you because they're concerned that exposure to you might be exposure to them. We had this is actually something that's happened twice in the last few years, where we had a group come to us, just sort of out of the blue and say, hey, can you help us? We are in a position where someone got into our system and launched a ransomware attack. And in both cases, we activated our, it wasn't even a client. So, we talked them through, this is what an incident response would look like, and here's the plan of action. And, one of the first things that always comes up is, do you have cyber insurance? Because this is likely going to be costly. You're going to have downtime. You're going to have mitigation costs. And, in both instances, it was, well, we have it, but it's very limited. The most recent one was, we had a $10,000 cap, which just does not cover a whole lot of downtime. The lost sales, the wages paid to employees, it was entirely inadequate to the organization. And we've seen that. We've helped put an organization back together after that. I will always tell you, you don't want to be in that position. You want to have an incident response plan before the incident happens, and have all of your systems mapped out, prioritized. How do we, a plan to recover? certainly, want that insurance coverage to be in place, that, when there are those big down times, if and when that happens to an organization, are they prepared? Can they weather that? Because it's very, very hard with only $10,000 of insurance coverage to weather a $250,000 event like that. And it certainly can be more depending on your industry and the extent of the attack. So understanding what the risks are to your organization, thinking through that. If something like this happens, what is it going to cost, and what is the plan of action so that we can prevent it from happening? And if it does happen anyway, how do we mitigate those losses? It's just a crucial part of business planning. And with the right team, with the right toolkits, a lot of times cybersecurity events can just be avoided. It's a much better thing to say, okay, we're going to analyze our business, come up with a plan, build out a roadmap, stay ahead of this, and stay in advance of the threats to the extent that it's possible, and have the toolkit and the monitoring in place, than to have that surprise bill of nobody expected this, but we got ransomware today, and we're going to have to figure out how long we're going to be down.
Yeah, so the solution, it's really a layered approach, right? There's no magic tool or application, right, that's guaranteed to keep you safe. I like to think of it like a wedding cake, right, where you have multiple layers. So, if you think of it in that capacity, your technology is really at the bottom, right? That's your kind of base layer. So those are the tools that you install to keep you protected, right? And everything kind of builds off of that. That next layer is really processes. So what are our internal policies? What plans do we have in place? What does our business continuity look like? Having all that documented, discussed, plans of action in the case of a breach or an attack or some sort of event, right? And then at the top, you have your people. And that's the training, really, to ensure that your staff are armed with the knowledge to keep the environment safe. Absolutely, the largest threat to any organization is its people. Unless your staff are equipped with the tools to recognize threats, whether it be spam, phishing attempts, fake emails, you're really opening yourself up to potential attacks, right? And like Chris had mentioned earlier, I mean, they're becoming much more sophisticated. They're intuitive. They're targeted. So your staff, the ones that are actively using the system, putting in their passwords, opening applications, those are your largest entry points for the bad actors, right? And they recognize that, and they're going to try to exploit that. So training. And it's, again, got to be a continuous process. It can't be, hey, when we onboard, we do a 20-minute training on security and our usage policies and send some, correspondence around, hey, be careful of bad emails, right? It needs to be some sort of cadence, whether that's monthly, quarterly. It needs to be documented. There needs to be, continuing education for maybe those that don't quite get it or have been habitual clickers, right, on things that they shouldn't. So it's building that posture that has all of those components baked in. So again, the layer cake, onion, however you want to kind of position it, but it's multiple approaches to your security posture.
Yeah, Justin, I would just add that that the user training is so critical, but also who you're training. It's everyone really in the workforce should have some training, but you want to especially make sure that people in leadership positions are aware of what's going on in the security world, the kind of attacks that they are going to expect. Because, quite honestly, if the info about the company, if you're on the website, you're a target for sure. But also people in accounts payable and HR, they're very targeted because they have access to payment abilities. They have access to private personal information, and they're definitely going to be targeted just because they have access to that and could potentially leak it or make a payment somewhere that they're not supposed to, not because they intentionally failed, but because they just didn't know.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's important to note as well, when we talk about training, this isn't something that you got to think, oh, geez, now I've got to go back and formalize some sort of training plan, and I've got to invest in all this time and effort in building this out. There are tools that you can leverage that are wonderful, very intuitive, very seamless, not a lot of intervention, right, from leadership. It's just getting those things in place and then having that, again, recurring cadence where they're educating and advising your employees.
So yeah, and thinking about that layer cake analogy, your layers here. I mean, the first place that we would start is the technology, and obviously, I'm going to go a little bit out of order here, but strong password policies were the very first wave of improving the technology layer and requiring greater length, greater complexity. They're now recommending using passphrases where it's 3, 4, or 5 words strung together to make it longer, because that's much harder for a computer to crack. Then of course, multi-factor authentication came along, where now you're not just saying something, you're not just presenting something that your username and password. Now you have to have something that you are, or something that you have, a phone, a fingerprint, things like that. And we're starting to see the bad actors figure out ways around even the multi-factor authentication. So now they're starting to push into a new technological solution with passwordless authentication and passkeys as the next wave of here's how we prevent the bad actors from impersonating our users, really is what we're doing. It's user credential theft is really identity fraud at the basis of it, and that's the heart and soul of the industry that is threat actors. But additionally, technological solutions, user access management, knowing, okay, this is the user's role. These are the things the user needs. What's the least amount of permission we can give the user to still enable the user to do their job? And then have a formal process where when we onboard a user, when we promote a user or move them to a new position, when we offboard a user, making sure that those permissions are correctly set and making sure that they're adjusted and making sure that they're removed when it's appropriate. Really formalizing that process. It's a process on top of technology to make sure that we're minimizing the exposure and the damage that can be done. And then, the security awareness training is a technical solution to lack of employee awareness. So, having a toolkit that can provide the training, have the user respond so that we know that they're actually learning things, and then documenting that training has occurred, so that the user has been made aware of the risks and how to respond to them. That second layer of solution, again, the email being being the entry point, the doorway into just about everything, using a good anti-spam, anti-phishing solution. They're never going to be perfect, but that is the front line of email defense. Is, can we just eliminate the stuff that's obviously bad? The second line is account takeover detection, where it's monitoring behavior as a user logs into their email or makes changes to their email account. If they're setting up new rules, do those rules make sense? Is it something suspicious? Should somebody investigate this? Are they connecting from unusual locations or at unusual times? Did someone suddenly travel from New York to San Francisco, or travel from Denver to Kenya? That's a really suspicious thing. They did that in less than 20 minutes. So either locking that user out or throwing an alert that somebody can investigate. Monitoring endpoints. So if something gets on the machine, what's the reaction? Is there somebody looking at, hey, this thing was detected, it was killed in quarantine, but does something more need to be done? The typical antivirus will kill it and it'll send you a notification, and that's the end of it. But really making sure that a human is following up on that and saying, well, sure, this software was found on this machine, but why would that software have ever been on that machine? Can lead to discovering malicious acts in process before they really become a big problem. And then, of course, that last layer is backup. If this data should be lost or encrypted in any way, do we have a plan to get it back? And even, services, like if the Google platform or the Microsoft platform goes down, do we still have a way to send and receive email? Those are technical solutions that do exist for that layer. So I guess at this point, I would like to talk about partnership. And a lot of people look at IT and IT security as a cost center, and that's not anything that we ever want to be. And certainly there are costs to it, but the point of IT is to empower you to do your business and to make sure that you can continue to do your business securely. And at Vertilocity, we want to be your partner. We want to be involved in those discussions of what's our outlook for the next year. How do we plan our budget? How do we know what our IT spend needs to be? What changes to technology have happened that we need to be aware of? Are we communicating what's going on with what's going on with risk in our business? Do we have a good handle on if somebody were to if something was to happen to our technology, how would that impact the business? Do we have a roadmap of or do we have an idea of what the risks are and how to control those risks? How do we scale up?
Chris, I was going to say, I think the most critical thing here is trust, right? Mm-hmm. The last word in that first sentence. So, do you trust your provider? That they're not just acting as a vendor, but they're truly looking out for the best interests of your organization, and they're being proactive in guiding you effectively, right? They need to be aligned, have a seat at the table. You should be able to lean on them for strategy, for updates on state of affairs with technology, bounce ideas, of, hey, we're thinking about doing this, or hey, there's some M&A activity on the horizon. IT should not be an afterthought. That your partner should be with you hand in hand throughout that process to ensure that one, any critical sensitive data is being protected, secured. They're advising you on what technologies you should be pursuing, or things that can consolidate and help expedite processes, gain efficiencies, rather than, again, just a vendor where, hey, if something breaks, we call them, they look into it, they fix it, they give us a quick update, right? I mean, that may have been fine 10, 15, 20 years ago, but the way that this is evolving, the partner really needs to be strategic in that capacity.
And, just, I would say, thinking about it as a partnership, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, oh, I had no idea you could do that for me. And, I love to hear that, but I hate to hear that, because I want you to know what I can do for you. And I want to be, a good partner should be presenting, these are things that we see in your organization, and do you have anything that you want to do with your organization that there's a technological hurdle for it? So, going from good enough to strategic IT, it's not just, well, can you keep things working? It's what's actually there. Do we have a handle on what exists in our environment? Do we know that our endpoints are secure? Have we tested the backup? Sure, we have a backup. Has anybody tested it? Do we know what it's going to take to bring things back online in a crisis? Do we have a plan around that? Are our user access controls well defined? Are we onboarding, offboarding people with, it terrifies me to see, but I see it all the time. We add new user, they get domain admin privileges, so they're global admins in Office 365, and it's just, it's the mentality of everybody can do everything really opens up a world of risk, and that's something that a good IT partner will provide you guidance on. Here's how we could reduce that risk, but still give users all the things that they need. So, a good partner is going to build that roadmap. What are your business goals? How can technology help you get there? How do we understand the risks to your organization? How do we make sure that those risks are minimized, but that users aren't feeling constrained by it? We never want that situation where IT security is the antithesis of IT productivity. There's always, of course, some struggle there. There's a tension there, but a good partner will help you minimize that. And then just regular evaluations. Where are we at? Have we done a review? Have we talked about the landscape and what new risks there are, and how do we address them, and what opportunities are there to fix that? So I would just strongly encourage everyone, if you have an IT partner, make sure that they're doing these things with you. Make sure that they're able to do the proactive, and they're not just responding when you ask for help. Make sure that you've got someone you can actually talk to about, here's where we want to go. Let's understand where we really are right now, and here is where we want to go, and have a plan for that. We don't want to be just that cost center chewing up money to enable you to work. We want to be your partner that helps you be a more successful organization.
Yeah, and here's just some good examples of questions that can help spark discussion internally or kind of from a self-evaluation, self-assessment standpoint, right? It's always good to question things. What challenges are you seeing with your current IT setup? Is there recurring problems that you're dealing with on a regular basis? Is there limitations that, hey, I wish if we could just do this, right, we'd be so much more efficient? How well is the technology supporting your business goals, right? Is it a hindrance to your goals, or is it a facilitator, right? Is it helping you get from point A to point B, or is it, limiting your ability to do so? Do you have an IT roadmap for 26, right? I mean, I know we're pretty much at the tail end of budget season for most organizations that are calendar year fiscal. But, is there a plan? Do we have a strategy? Do we know what the next 12 months are going to look like and where our investments are going to need to be and, things that we're going to need to address? Or are we flying blind, right, to a certain degree? So, again, these are just things to think about as it relates to your specific organization. There's a number of other ones, but just to kind of get the thought process going, these are some great ones to initiate discussion. And for those of you that are interested in kind of taking a deeper dive, we have a totally free assessment tool that will walk you through some questions to give you, some clarity, a clearer picture on your security posture and any vulnerabilities that may have gone unnoticed, right? So lots of really great insights and questions in here that, you think, wow, I never really thought of it, never really thought of it that way, or I never really thought of that, or I don't know that we've got a plan around this. Maybe this is something we should look at. So, if you want to scan the QR code there on the screen, I believe we'll send this out as well. But, again, totally free. Appreciate everybody, joining and wanted to provide this tool for you guys to use. At your discretion, you can take your report. If you've got existing IT, whether that be internal or external, and you want to share your findings and say, hey, I've got some questions on some of these items. Or if you look at it and say, hey, Justin, I don't really understand this, or can you further expand on that? Definitely reach out to Chris or I. We'll share our contact information. Again, we're resources for you here. As Patrick mentioned earlier, we're part of the family, right? So HBKS, HBK, Vertilocity, we all work in conjunction and really just want to ensure that, our clients, our friends, our family, our community members are effectively protected against these bad actors. And with that, I think we will wrap things up at this point. So again, huge thank you to everybody for joining us. Chris and I are happy to stick around if there are any questions. I know we've got about 10 minutes left here, so we can hang back for a bit. If there's not any questions, please be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn. Chris and I are both on there. You can follow Vertilocity if you're looking for some further insight as well. We share a lot of free content. Just want to say thank you. And if there's anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Okay. While we wait for questions to potentially come into the inbox, I'd like to just briefly say that that's our show for today, folks. Thanks to our friends at Vertilocity and HBKS for all the helpful information. And thanks to everyone who attended today's event. A reminder that you will be receiving a copy of the recording of today's event. If you have any questions for Justin, Chris, or Patrick, their contact info is on your screen. There's no need to log out, just end your On24 session and you're good to go. There are, of course, more webinars coming your way, so keep an eye out for those as we announce them. And we currently have no questions, so that's it for today. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone, for attending.